All right, here we are, y'all. Welcome to this episode of Optimal AF. This is Nathan Barnett here. Today, we're going to get into letting go to allow the flow. This has been a heavy topic for me, especially these past several weeks as I've been moving into this new transition. I've never really been one that's been big on New Year's resolutions and things like that, but I do see the value, and I have been experiencing the value of flipping the page where, we are in a new year now. I don't know when you're going to listen to this, but I'm recording this on January 2nd of the new year of 2024. And like I said, these past several weeks, I've really consciously taken the time to step back because really last year was, and I'm not super big into numerology, but I have studied a little bit here and there. And last year, the kind of main archetype in tarot was the Chariot, which is the law of movement. And you come to that. Chariot is number 7, and 2023, 2 plus 2 plus 3 is 7. So going into this year's 2 plus 2 plus 4 is balance, which is the law of action and reaction. And so, as I said, last year, in congruence with that theme, in line with that theme of motion, it was a lot of movement, well, I wouldn't even say a lot of movement, but a lot of motion, because as we'll get into, don't get confused with movement and motion, because they're not always the same. Sometimes you're doing a lot of doing a lot of motion, but there's not a lot of movement. And so last year was a lot of motion and honestly not a whole lot of movement. Looking at the different areas of my life, there's some pieces that I've made tremendous progress on, especially when it comes to my own internal state and my own belief systems and really the inner work. I've made huge progress in the inner world of myself. And there hasn't necessarily been a lot of translation on the physical level yet. And, if you've listened to me long enough, you know that the embodiment of who you want to be and how you want to show up as is really the fundamental step to manifesting the things that you want in your life. Because, you essentially you need to be it so that you can see it. And there's these different laws at play. And so I took these past couple weeks to really take a step back and to see, okay, what's worked over 2023. In the middle of the year, and 2023 really for me was a lot about systems. If I look back at the beginning of 2023 and what I thought I knew about creating a business and optimizing my life, there was so many missing pieces, and hence why I had the sense of struggling so much. And over the course of the year, I started to become more and more aware of all of these different pieces and how they all fit together, and being able to essentially look at all the different aspects of my life, from my finances to my physical health, to my spiritual health, to my mental, emotional well-being, to my relationships, to my time management, all of these different areas. And I was able to start to create a system that allows me to be able to improve upon all of those different areas really simultaneously, all at the same time. And what has helped me the most with that is actually I've studied Tony Robbins, and he has a system called RPM, which is Results Focused Purpose Driven Massive Action Plan, which at the fundamental core of it is this system for teaching you how to put results first and how to put purpose behind it. And I don't know if he knew this, but this is essentially this process of manifestation that is tangible. because you want to take all these ideas and then you want to collapse. Okay, this is the potential that I want to realize. And that has to do with getting clear on what the results are. Because so much of the time when we think about the different goals that we want in our life, first and foremost, we never really get super clear on what we actually want. So much of the time we spend thinking about things that we don't want, and we attract those things to us. You ever notice how the more that you worry about something, the more that it continues to show up in your life, whether that's with relationships or whether that's with your own personal health or your finances or whatever that might be. So the things that you worry about the most, the things that you don't want to happen and spend all your time thinking that you don't want this thing to happen, those things end up popping up. And so getting clear on what you actually want helps you to shift your focus so that you're actually focusing on, this is what I want out of my life. This is what I want in this area of my life. This is this goal. And that was a huge breakthrough for me because I was so focused on, like most people, what do I got to do? What are, here's my vague goal. I kind of want to get there, or I don't want this thing to happen. And okay, now what do I got to do? And so I just filled my days with just a bunch of doing, essentially just a bunch of motion, but it wasn't necessarily moving me any closer to the goals because I didn't necessarily have super specific, clear goals. And when I started learning the RPM system, it helped me to gain more awareness around the actual things that I want to achieve, what I actually want in my life, from the specific goals for, the next week to the next month to the next 90 days to the next year, and all the way out to my ultimate vision for my life. But here's what happened. When I really installed that system, it was about end of June. Actually, no, it was like into July, actually. It was so like into July, I really installed that system. It took me like a few weeks to actually build that out. And it really helped me to start to systematize being able to make progress in all of these different areas of my life simultaneously. Because, you put things in different categories and then you know what needs to happen in each one of these categories to help you move forward. And that shows up in your week and that shows up in your day. But what started to happen was my results, the things that I was actually after when I started to get clearer and clearer about what I actually wanted in my life, those things started to become less and less tangible, meaning it was hard to actually measure if this thing was accomplished outside of my own kind of feeling nature about, this is how I feel, which again, when we think about the things that we want, why do we want the things that we want? Almost always it's because there's some kind of emotional feeling that we're after, some kind of meaning that this thing is going to give us. And so it's really, it's driven by emotions. And my results became more and more in line with that. The things that I wanted, like being all that I can be, or realizing my full potential, or expressing my genius, or aligning myself to love. These are very specific things. These are very specific results that I want, but they're not something that you can really measure to like check off on a box. Like, yes, this thing happened. And while having the thing to actually check off on the box isn't super important, because again, we're not really after that thing, it is important to have something that that there is a specific, tangible, measurable outcome associated with it. Because what started to happen for me is when I started to implement that system, I found myself, even though I was way more efficient and effective at doing the things that I chose to do than I ever have been in my entire life, I still found myself in this place where I was just filling up my entire day with things that I thought I needed to do that really, to be honest, at least 80% of it didn't really move the needle. Again, it was just motion. I was just moving around, flailing around, but not actually going anywhere. And it took me a while to really find that out. And I needed to go through that process to come to that realization. But towards the end of the year, and really one of the tipping points for me is, I just was at this point of really burning myself out, and I knew I needed a break, and I actually ended up getting a cold, and I got sick, which, for me is very rare. Like maybe once every several years, I get sick. And that's always a feedback for me to know, okay, if I'm pushing myself past where my kind of current belief system, my belief structure of limits is, then it's showing up as a physical result. I got sick. And so, long story short, what I realized and what has been another breakthrough for me is getting clear on that intention, which I call it more of an intention now than a specific result. So the intention, which I've already stated, like I want to express my genius, or I want to align myself to love, or whatever that might be. That's the intention, the specific intention, and then having the purpose associated with that. So why is this thing important to you? And in manifestation, this is the water element. This is like the charge, the emotional charge that takes that intention, takes that kind of fiery intention that you have, and actually starts to create a container around it and starts to charge that thing, to put it into tension, to draw that thing to you, that reality, that circumstance, that thing, whatever that is. And again, this is the process of manifestation. Really, the system that I've been working on is a system of manifestation, of actually how do you practically manifest things into your life. And what I got to, the last step of that, is then being able to actually manufacture, to create specific, tangible outcomes. So if my intention is I want to align myself with love, and that's my specific intention that I want out of the day or out of the week or whatever I'm kind of planning for, and then I have my purpose associated with that, which, everybody's got their reasons for things. So the purpose is just what's the strong driver for you. And then the missing piece was and is to create some kind of measurement to say that, okay, I achieved this result. Or in other words, in order for me to know that I realized that intention, then I need to create some kind of measurement to know that, okay, based on me realizing this intention, then this measurement is going to be achieved. And that might be, I gave 5 hugs today. And that's my way of knowing that if it's something I can check off the box, that if I did that thing, that is going to be a very good indicator that I have realized the intention that I set out for myself, like the important thing. And the cool thing is, the actual tangible, measurable thing doesn't really matter that much. You're just creating something that gives you the feedback and gives you the indication that you have realized that result. And the cool thing, once you do all of those, then what you actually have to do becomes so super simple. And there's you realize, and this is my realization, you realize more and more that the things that are actually achieving the results, you don't have to do that much. And I'm learning now that the key is not how much can I possibly do. The key is, what is the most highest leverage, most effective thing, the one thing that I can do that is going to give me the most results. And I would rather spend time meditating and getting super clear on what I want, why I want it, and what is the specific result that is going to tell me that I'm actually realizing the things that I want. Because, and then getting clear on what is the one thing that is going to actually help me get there. And if I can boil it down to one thing, then I know I'm in a good place. Like even today, the one thing is recording this video, recording this podcast, because I made that decision that if I did this thing, it was going to have the most wide-reaching effect on all of my goals. And so my process now, and well, before I go on to that, there's a final step here, which is really, I said it, the other thing was the game changer, but no, this thing is really the breakthrough here, is once you have that measurable thing, then, because a lot of times outcomes, like I want 1 million subscribers on my YouTube page, that's something that's measurable, like, yes, but that's an outcome. And a lot of things that are just an outcome goal, it still can seem vague as to, okay, how do I actually make that happen? So once you have that one goal, which in my in Life Magic Academy, I go through this process to actually help you identify, okay, what are the 4, or maybe even fewer, but what are the primary categories, or I call them modes of your life. Basically, these are the modes in which I express my unique genius, and I have a process for breaking all of this down. But essentially, for me, I have like 4 different modes, 4 different areas that I express my genius through. These are kind of like archetypes, but I call them life types. So as an example, so for me, I have the leader, and both of these are actually, they're two-sided. So leader is also coupled with the servant or the server, one that serves. And the master, which is another one of mine, master, apprentice, creator, disintegrator, and teacher, student. So within each one of those categories, I have an ultimate vision, ultimate purpose, and I have 1 year, 90-day goals. And then I have broken those down into a process. And for me, a process is, I define as something that I can do that isn't reliant on anything else happening. So in my master life type, my master category, that process is training 5 times a week. Because I know that if I show up to the gym and I do my training 5 times a week, which is my kind of current prescribed training regimen, I know if I show up and do that is the one thing, the one process. And again, the process, it means I have control over that. I choose to show up to the gym. Nobody is taking that away from me. That's something I have complete control over. And so it's a process that I know if I just do that one thing, all of the other things that are associated with it are going to end up working themselves out. And so I don't really have to worry about those things, because in order for me to really show up and train the way that I want to, it's like I need to make sure I'm going to bed on time. I need to make sure that I'm getting my meals and my nutrition dialed in. I need to make sure I'm taking my recovery seriously. Like, all of these things must be accounted for, and they end up being accounted for me to maximize the one process that is leading to the one big goal of that life type, of that category. And I do the same thing for the other different categories. So just to give you an example, for my teacher/student category, creating one of these podcast videos every single week is the process. Because if I do this process, it's going to be the highest leverage activity that is going to help everything else move to get to the ultimate goal. And it's a process. I can just show up and make this happen. And for my leader/server life type, the process is to talk to 5 new people every week. Super simple. Because I know that for me, as being within each one of these categories, again, if you want to take a real deep dive on this, reach out to me about my Life Magic Academy, where I'm building out a whole curriculum that kind of takes people through this whole process. But either way, just to give you the rundown, within each one of these life types too, you have different roles that you play. So a leader, I'm an entrepreneur, I am a father, or in the future, soon to be. But I even fathering my creations is a father archetype, father role, or father even to my pets. I'm a father. That's part of my leader. So, there's different roles within each one of those life types. And then I have my creator, disintegrator life type, which the one process for that is making one song per week. So literally, once you go through this process, and this was the huge breakthrough for me, it's like once you go through this process and get these things figured out, my whole week and really my whole process to achieving my goals boils down to 4 key actions. And these are like just non-negotiable actions. So it's like making one song per week, talking to 5 new people per week, recording 1 podcast, and training 5 times. Like if I do those things, then everything else associated with that is going to be taken care of. And the coolest part is the rest of the time outside of doing those things is essentially free time. And so what I do now is I ask myself better questions. It's not how much can I possibly work? It's what is the least amount that I need to do to achieve the maximum amount of results, and then how do I systematize all of that to then create something that is essentially runs itself, and like all the other things associated with it are taken care of. And even taking this approach with the business and like focusing on, okay, what's the one thing that is really moving the needle, and how do we fully optimize that one thing? And I had this resistance towards doing just one thing, but I realized that for me, it was this process of taking everything, because I want everything, that's just part of just my path in this life is I want it all. Like I want to be an athlete. I want to be a musician. I want to be a teacher. I want to be, this entrepreneur, like all of these different things, a coach. But instead of, because I always started thinking in terms of, literally having all of these things, which is like this thing over here, this thing over here, this thing over here, this thing over here, all these separate little pieces that I was trying to be accountable for. And so when I first started the RPM system that I learned from Tony Robbins, it was a system that helped me hold myself accountable to all of these different things. But then I still realized that there was still a lot of time that I was just wasting, a lot of energy that I was wasting trying to do all of these things all at once. And all the business coaches I would talk to, all the life coaches I would talk to, they say, just focus on one thing. What's the one thing that's working, and just focus on that. But that never worked for me because I never just wanted one thing. But now I realize that my path, like what I'm here to do is to take all of those things and turn it into just one system. Again, if I could just dial in a few key things, and I think of it in like terms of knobs, where it's like you got these different knobs for every area of your life that you can kind of play around with and adjust them accordingly, like the volume and intensity, adjust them according to how you want them. But then that's what I was doing. But then I realized if I can systematize all of these different things, I can essentially just create one knob that controls the whole thing, that I can just kind of move around the way I want to. And a step beyond that is completely and utterly surrendering to the flow of life. Because imagine just being able to wake up whenever you want to, or whenever you are called to, and literally just being able to align to yourself, align to your soul, whatever words you want to put behind it, you just align to that infinite intelligence within you. And you're able to allow that flow and allow that intelligence to guide you, and just have full trust in that. But there's this balance here between complete like surrender and just letting go, and then having the structures in place to hold everything together. Because in my experience, and again, this is maybe just a reflection of my own personal development, but I find that it's very common for a lot of people. In my experience, if I don't have a certain amount of structure of, this thing needs to get done at this time, I have to go this place this time. If I don't have a certain amount of structure, it can be a slippery slope to just go with the flow, and paradoxically, having that amount of freedom in your life can actually start to restrict you, because you can start to make choices or choose not to make certain choices that ultimately create more stress in your life. But on the other side of that, you can have too much rigidity where it's like everything is structured. And so therefore, there's no wiggle room to allow for freedom. And now you're just restricted. It's like everything, it's like every minute of your day is accounted for. And that's kind of what I was leaning towards. Is like there was too much structure to where I didn't feel freedom. And so now the question is, and this is, again, it comes back down to like asking better and better questions. Now the question is, what is the right amount of structure to create the right amount of freedom, or all of the freedom? Like just having just enough structure, just enough things held in place so that it opens up the gateway to everything else. And that's where we're at right now. And this is going to continue to be a developing story that I will continue to unfold and continue to share with you all as it progresses, because I want you to get a lot of value out of this. And this is my platform to teach. So I'm going to continue to work on, being able to provide as much value as possible, being able to, touch on different topics and provide tangible and practical things that you can do. Because, I like ideas, I like, ideals, and that's a lot of where I live, because I'm always like, okay, how do I take this ideal and bring it down into the practical to actually do something? And this is, like I said, this is the process that is unfolding into. So just to kind of recap, because I kind of spilled a lot there in the last 25 minutes or so. Just to recap, first and foremost is you need to identify what these kind of big categories are for you and what your goals are for each one of these categories. So again, that might be like finances, that might be your relationships, whatever those things are. It's like figure out, create a list of these different areas of your life, and then get clear on what do I ultimately want out of each one of these areas. And then 2 is to, once you figure out what you want, you can create like tangible, measurable goals. Like what's a 1-year goal? What's a 90-day goal? And then you can break that down into processes. It's like, what's the process that if I just focus on this thing, it's going to have the highest leverage impact that's going to lead me towards my ultimate goal. And then just lastly is to learn to ask the right questions. All possibilities exist as a potential because the universe is infinite. Infinity is infinite. What do you know? So all possibilities exist as a potential, and your job is to get super clear on what those potentials you want to realize. And how you realize those potentials is you ask the right questions, because the answers you get are implicit in the questions that you ask. So don't ask yourself what's the answer, ask what's the right question that's going to give me the answer that I'm looking for. And that's the secret, folks. Okay, so I hope this was valuable for you, and I look forward to continuing to share more and more and more and more and more love, because that's what I got. That's what I'm continuing to align myself to bring to you. Don't forget, y'all, the journey is the way. If you want to get deeper into this stuff, hit me up about Life Magic Academy. That's where we really get into this stuff, like on a personal level. So look forward to seeing you soon. Either way, have a great day. Peace.